Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patron, David F. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. I'm going for an ultra efficient episode today. I am traveling this weekend and last minute my plans have changed slightly, but I do want to get this information across. First up today, Joe Tetmeyer on Twitter shared some images of this new massive truck apparently delivering some major parts to the casting area at Giga Texas. So the speculation is now rampant. Is the Gigapress finally arriving in Texas? We can't say for sure, but the timing would make sense. There's been a lot of chatter lately about a Tesla stock buyback, and it's important to note that Elon did like this tweet from Vincent when he said, "I'm glad to see Tesla is currently sitting on a huge cash reserve with a strong free cash flow to ride through a possible tough 2023. No one can predict the future 100%. We know Elon is paranoid about survival and making it through recessions as he's been through them before, and I mean that in the best way possible. So just something to keep in mind as all of these Tesla stock buyback conversations continue. This company, MBLM, does these brand intimacy surveys, and they have Tesla number 2 behind only Disney. The survey measures the relationship brands build with their customers to establish trust and gain brand loyalty. Here's the top 10 with Tesla in the second slot. The only other automaker in the top 10 is Mercedes-Benz. But doesn't really tell us anything we don't already know, just that Tesla consumers have very strong emotional ties to the brand. Elon did have a dire warning for Lucid in response to Drive Tesla Canada, reporting that Lucid has just been doing everything they can to avoid cancellations, doing somewhat of an aggressive tactic, calling customers, emails, following up, etc. Not really anything out of the ordinary for a business to do in a recession or heading to one, but Elon said they, being Lucid, are not long for this world, meaning they may not have long to live. Earlier this year, I tweeted that Tesla's accumulated deficit, aka the most the company had ever cumulatively lost at one point, was $6.3 billion back in 2019. Right now, Lucid sits at $6.9 billion and of course is still growing rapidly, that being their accumulated deficit. You have to remember, Tesla went through production hell with the Model 3 after already having the Roadster, the Model S, and the Model X all out in the wild, and that was not in the midst of a major recession, so things are going to be very challenging for Lucid and even Rivian in the months ahead. We have a new report from Reuters saying that Tesla in Giga Shanghai will actually stop production of the Model Y for the last week of December. I'll share what I think this is in a second, but they're saying it would be from December 25th to January 1st, and they said this would be in line of part of plans to cut Model Y production of about 30% for the month of December. Remember, those 20% production cut plans had been refuted, but Reuters saying Tesla targeting production of just over 20,000 Model Ys for the last 3 weeks of December. If you take the average Model Y rate from November per week, which was in the neighborhood of 13,000, you could see, doing the math, that's 39,000, so roughly 19,000 less Model Ys over that 3-week period if this is true. But I would like to add, this possible shutdown for the last week of December, it could just be a retooling situation. We've heard those rumors about new HD radar that could be marketed early in Q1. So if those cars were to be delivered, you of course would have to implement that into the line sometime before that, as we're usually waiting between 4, 8, 12 weeks for new vehicle deliveries. Of course, depending on the geography. But as we've been saying now for weeks, we should be expecting slowdowns and things like this to happen. So again, just don't be surprised. But the unfortunate truth right now is it's tough to know what's true when it comes to reporting coming out of China. So we'll do our best. From Drive Tesla Canada, we have a new community called the Arches in Las Vegas that is now being dubbed a new Tesla city because these new build homes have solar panels and a Tesla Powerwall paired with EV charging stations. Here's a quick video of one of the homes and the audio to show you we still have a lot of educating to do.
It's 100% off of solar, and you have this Tesla battery bank here, which stores all the power. But let's just say if power does get cut off, how long does it last for? That I'm not too sure. I feel the technology is just not there yet. However, I think that's kind of cool, but I just don't even know how they got this to pass with Nevada Power is not tapped into it. So this is a little bit unique for me.
So there you have it, riveting coverage, but 51 homes so far built in this community. You may recall the barrier for Tesla entering the India market being the tariffs. Well, here's some interesting data on India and EVs. From benchmark source, India is likely to build only around 100 gigawatt hours of battery capacity by the end of the decade, enough for around 2.5 million EVs. An exec from one of the top anode manufacturers in India said, "I think India is far behind. Even the US was far behind, but the Inflation Reduction Act changes everything." India has a set target of having 30% of its passenger car sales electric by 2030 from less than 1% last year. Based on current plans, India will account for less than 0.5% of global battery capacity in 2030, according to Benchmark. Also from Benchmark, they're telling us China's Jiangsu province will produce more batteries than the rest of the world this year. Jiangsu is forecast to produce almost 250 gigawatt hours of battery cells next year, 10 gigawatt hours more than all other non-Chinese countries. I'm sharing this one because it's important to note massive change can happen relatively quickly. In 2018, North America's cell production output was 40% more than the Jiangsu province at 27 gigawatt hours. Since that time, so the last 4 years, Jiangsu's battery production has increased by 850%, while North America's has only doubled. Many Americans know about Shanghai and Beijing, but don't sleep on Jiangsu, especially as we head into the future, because their GDP has ranked second in China for 3 decades. And here we have cobalt prices falling, and yes, many people are moving to LFP, but cobalt is not going to be phased out anytime soon, at least not completely. The price of cobalt has fallen by 42% to $22.95 a pound since reaching a 4-year high earlier in April. Previously, a lot of the demand for cobalt was driven by the smartphone and electronics market, but now EV batteries make up the majority of global cobalt demand. So not only is the sentiment around cobalt right now a bit more negative given the smartphone and electronic market, but the supply of cobalt has also increased this year. It's forecast to increase to 170,000 tons this year, which would be 10% year-over-year growth. At the new GM battery factory in Ohio with LG, dubbed Ultium LLC, they just had a vote, and yes, they voted heavily in favor of working with the UAW. The new UAW president, Ray Curry, said this vote shows that they want to be part of maintaining the high standards and wages that UAW members have built in the auto industry. It's important to note though, just because they voted to work with the UAW does not mean a deal is yet reached, as there will be plenty of negotiating that lies ahead. Look, many of you guys know I'm not anti-union at all, but do these 98% of people that voted yes for the UAW not know about what the UAW has been up to over the last few years? If I'm missing something, please let me know below. From Drive Tesla Canada, Rivian has a new R&D center in Serbia. From the VP for Talent Acquisition, there are 14 Rivian employees already in Serbia, but that number will jump to 25 by the end of the month. This morning, we got the data for the Producer Price Index. It increased 0.3% for the month, and expectations were 0.2%. This was not a major market mover today, but now the markets will shift their focus to Tuesday, when we'll get the next reading for the Consumer Price Index. The head of portfolio construction at Morgan Stanley's global office said month-over-month PPI rising slightly and coming in just over expectations is yet another reminder of how sticky inflation is, and that it will take time before we see it normalize. This 0.3% increase came despite a 3.3% decline in final demand energy costs, which was offset by an identical 3.3% increase in the food index. So yeah, next Tuesday's CPI release will be more important than the data today, but with people already anxious and on edge, any indication that prices are still elevated and that inflation is stickier than currently believed would be a negative for the markets, giving the Fed more of a green light to continue to raise rates. Again, not at a faster pace, but just leaving them elevated for longer. Speaking of, Elon has very strong opinions about this, as he said if the Fed raises rates again next week, which all indications are they will, the recession will be greatly amplified, as we currently have a 77% chance of a 50 basis point rate hike at the meeting next week. But to send you off into the weekend on a more positive note, there are now 40 Megapack units balancing the grid in Belgium, making it the biggest operational energy storage system in continental Europe. Thank you for bearing with me for today's very brief episode. Again, traveling this weekend, last minute change of plans, so heading out earlier than expected, but hope you all have a wonderful wonderful and a safe weekend. Please like the video if you did, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.